What do you picture when you hear this phrase, midlife crisis? Chances are you might see some version of a very stereotypical story of a man in a midlife crisis who has traded in his safe automobile that he's driven, possibly for the last several decades, for a younger, sleeker, sportier model like a Ferrari. And most commonly, it's red. And it's not just the car that gets traded in, it's often the wife, the partner of several years, several decades, for also a younger, sleeker, slenderer version, most typically blonde. And whether it's an affair or he leaves the marriage for this new relationship, it's a period of time characterized as rebellion and also known for a lot of regrets about the choices he has or has not made leading up till now. And often this time itself can be looked on afterwards as a time of regret for those choices that were made, those impulsive, missing out on youth, facing mortality phase in life. But what about for us women? If you reflect back when I was younger, there was never an image of a midlife crisis for a woman. It was always about the man. And yet now that I'm actually in midlife, I just turned 50 last summer. I've been in menopause for a couple of years. I've been in my own midlife quote crisis, but I've actually viewed it as a midlife awakening or really a midlife homecoming. And if you picture the Chinese character, well, maybe you can't picture it, but you've probably heard this before. The Chinese character that means crisis also means opportunity. So, this episode today is really diving into this conversation about the midlife awakening or the midlife homecoming. And really, that's what this season is dedicated to, is supporting you, listener. Perhaps you're a woman at midlife or somewhere in the range of this phase where you're really questioning the stories that you've been living your life according to and really starting to look at, are they true? And if they weren't true, and if you really were the author of your life with authority to shape your life from here forward, what do you want that life to be and look like? And so there's a quote by Brene Brown that really speaks to this phase in a powerful way. She says, people may call what happens at midlife a crisis, but it's not. It's an unraveling, a time when you feel a desperate pull to live the life you want to live, not the one you're supposed to live. The unraveling is a time when you're challenged by the universe to let go of who you think you're supposed to be and to embrace who you are. Brene Brown, thank you so much for your wisdom. I love that quote. And when I found this quote, it really resonated with me. And I just recently done a bunch of writing about what I was calling the humbled and tumbled phenomenon, something that I was experiencing personally, and a lot of my clients, my friends, and colleagues were going through as well. It was feeling like we were going through the ringer because not only was there perimenopause and menopause with hormonal changes that had us feeling really insecure and completely out of control, there was also this rising up of the inner critic that seemed to become even more vocal and adamant that, like, we were insane and worthless. I'll get into that more in a moment. And so, in this bath of hormonal changes and night sweats and hot flashes, and there's so many different symptoms you might have experienced or be experiencing yourself, that it's this humbled and tumbled phenomenon. Because as I wrote about it, as we're moving forward in this journey of life, we're facing these discordant parts of ourselves. All of a sudden, the story of the life that we've been living and what seemed true and real, all of a sudden, it seems like this old shell of a person operating based on what other people expected of us. what they think about us, what their judgments were, and this new core of a self that knows all of that is bullshit and is most interested in coming home to herself. But there's this clashing of these different parts of ourselves. And this is the journey that Glennon Doyle refers to as an untaming. It's also the journey of rewilding, when there's this unwinding that Brene Brown is talking about, where, wait, we start questioning, wait a second, all these stories that I thought about myself, they're not true. But then if they're not true, what is true? And there can also be this reckoning and rumbling of, if you're like the majority of women growing up in this culture who have been taught to make other people our priority, there can be this rumbling of, WTF, I have spent my life making other people and their dreams and desires more important than me. And there's like the dragon who just wants to flame fire. Hello, hot flashes. And so the reckoning and the rumbling is like, what have I been doing? And what do I want to do going forward? So this phase of life can feel crazy. So if you have felt humbled and tumbled, if you have felt like you're going crazy, if in your own unwinding and unraveling, you've been feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, I just want to say, I so get it. I've been through the ringer myself. And that's why I'm so dedicated to this season 3 of shining the light on this and really inviting you into these conversations of our own untaming, our own homecoming, so that you can recognize, because whenever we go against the conditioning, those stories that we bought, that we've been swimming in as early as the womb, most times, most chances, when we start to see that for what it is, conditioning, there can be a lot of grief for all the ways that we've left ourselves. There can be a lot of anger. What have I done? There can be a raging towards the patriarchy that infused us with these lies that I'm going to get to in a few moments. There's 4 specific lies woven into this conditioning that we have learned as true and real, and it's impacted everything about our life and our relationships and our choices and our work and our money flows and our creations or lack thereof, our body, our relationship with this skin sack that we walk around in, this beautiful temple. And so there can be this range of emotions. There can be regret that we bought into it for so long. There can also be this sense of, am I crazy? Like, I don't see anyone else making these different kind of choices. I see everyone else swimming in lines, trying to fit in, buying these stories in real and true. So as you start to untame and rewild and tap into even more of the wild of you, it can feel even more crazy making, like you're doing something wrong because you are going off in uncharted territories and going off in this direction that your soul is calling you to. So I am here as your guide, as your, parallel play friend, as your cheerleader, as your reminder that you're not crazy. As Glennon Doyle says in Untaming, you're not crazy, you're a goddamn cheetah. So this journey of homecoming can be filled with a deep sense of vulnerability and insecurity, of trust and doubt. And so one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves as women in this path of the midlife awakening is to really, really, really get intimate with the stories that our mind is telling us. And there's four lies, four main lies. There are a lot of different lies, but I've summed it up into four main lies that our inner critic often tells us. And so I call these inner critics the negative narrators because they are literally narrating our lives to us. And just like a narrator in a movie or a book, they are controlling and influencing the choices we make. And they're killing our confidence when we listen to them and buy their stories in real and true. So here are the confidence killers, the four big lies that your mind might be telling you. Lie number one, you can't trust yourself. Lie number two, your happiness is secondary to the approval and comfort of others. Yeah, breathe in that one. Lie three, you're not enough and you don't have enough. Lie four, you're falling behind in life. You're a failure. Now, the thing about these lies is that they can seem really true, like really real, even when you know better, even when you are super smart and savvy and know they're just thoughts, just stories that your mind is making up. But the problem is when we are stuck in these stories, stuck in the rut that our brains have made. Our brains, after having listened to these narrators for decades, have created these grooves in our brain that are like super highway now. So like these thoughts buzz along them like zoom, 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 zoom. These are the thoughts in the pathway that our brain knows really well and sends us on. And so it's the path of least resistance to keep buying these lies. But think about how when you're buying these lies as true and real, the impact of that on your life. Like, which one of these lies feels the strongest for you or has the most charge for you right now? And then look at maybe it's lie one, you can't trust yourself. Maybe it's lie two, your happiness is secondary to the approval and comfort of others. Maybe it's lie three, you're not enough, you don't have enough. Maybe it's lie four, you're falling behind in life, you're a failure. Which one is it that has the most charge? Just tune into that. And now tune into how is that playing out in your life right now? If you're buying that lie that you can't trust yourself, chances are you're doubting yourself a lot, second guessing your intuition, or feeling really disconnected from your intuition, like feeling like it doesn't ever listen to you, or it's talking to you, but you're not acting on it because you doubt yourself. And so just notice the impact of these lies, that specific lie, on your life, on your relationships, on your business, on your professional path, on your money flows. And you can begin to sense the ripple effect of this story on all areas of your life. Because we don't just live in categories, right? Like the story, you can't trust yourself, shows up in all areas of our lives. So by shining a spotlight on these lies, on these negative narrators, you can begin to reclaim your power from them because they thrive, first of all, when they're unconscious, when you're not aware of them. They also thrive when, okay, maybe you're conscious of them, but you're not questioning them. You're letting them be true and real. But now that we start to shine a spotlight on them and view them as a story that your mind is telling you, that begins to help. That begins to give you some space around them. And then the next step to take to begin to get freedom from these negative narrators is to recognize what they really are And that is, these are stories rooted in cultural conditioning designed to try and control us. Crazy making, right? And yet, tune in for a moment. The woman, the version of you, the version of me, the version of us that buys into these lies as true and real, we are controllable because we're not tapped into our power. We don't trust ourselves. We don't feel like we're enough. Our self-esteem is just plummeting. We feel like our only value is how pleasing we can be to other people. We're not pleasing ourselves. Our life force energy is draining out of us from these choices that we're making. Our power is deflated. There's depression, there's anxiety, there's a sense of dissatisfaction with life, but we're not able to figure out what it is. And we feel like there must be something wrong with us. That makes us controllable. That is the taming. And we have internalized this patriarchy. And I'm not bringing any of this up as any kind of blaming or shaming. That would just be adding more pain and suffering for all of us. I'm bringing this up because when I started my own journey of unwinding from these stories years and years ago, there was this shock that these stories could be there. And there was this sense of like blame and damn the patriarchy and shame. And yet there's also the awareness of like the internalized patriarchy. We have taken this on for ourselves. So blame and shame doesn't serve any of us because it creates us as a victim. We aren't victims. We are more powerful than we've ever actually fully acknowledged. Or maybe you've acknowledged it, but perhaps you don't live in that empowered, powerful place all the time. So I'm using the expression of patriarchy and cultural conditioning because that's where these stories come from, but not as a blame and shame, more as a key to liberation. So once you recognize that these are stories rooted and designed to control us, then you can see how effective they've been, right? And so, what's the reverse of these lies? What is the truth that if we were to live it, would empower us and allow us to embody our power that would be so off the charts, we would be uncontrollable? Because let's look at this for a moment. Cultural conditioning is about trying to control the masses and like learning what is right and wrong and trying to keep a society controllable and tamed so that things can be managed, so that we can evolve in a way dictated by the few as a path that we should be. Hello, like women being subservient to men. So all of that path. So when we see it for the conditioning, we can break out of that and look at how much more powerful and untamable we would be when we are living these truths. Check these out and notice how they feel in your body when you hear these. Truth 1, I can trust myself. Truth 2, my happiness gets to be my primary priority. Truth 3, I'm more than enough and have so much abundance, inner and outer. Truth 4, I'm right where I need to be on my path. Bam, right? Now that's a whole different way of viewing yourself and your life, isn't it? So what was that like in your body? My sense is it probably felt a lot lighter. And what's light is often what's true for us. And what is heavy and that contracted sense that the lies can have us living in, that so often lies are untruths. So tuning into your body, that can be one way for you to tap into moving forward from here. Wait a second, am I buying a lie or is this the truth here? And tune into that. Is this feeling light and correct? And here's where the unwinding journey and the untaming journey can feel confusing, because that's what you once bought as real and true. You're now questioning that, and you're now recognizing that's not true. So the things that you're now listening to and tuning into that seem true, like I can trust myself, it can feel confusing for a little while, like you're uncrossing your wires, or it's like two waves that are overlapping. You're like swimming through it, attempting to get into, wait, where's the current that is the truth for me? Here's where this is a practice. And so these first steps that I'm sharing with you, seeing the lies for what they are, cultural conditioning, becoming more aware of them, and noticing when you're caught up in one of those stories. And when you notice you're caught up in one of those stories, one of the best things you can do is pause and get really present with your body and with your sensory input. What are you aware of? Because one of the best ways to break free of the lies is, one, to create a pattern interrupt. So instead of continuing to drive along that super highway of the lie, believing that story of I can't trust myself, and it's going to take you down and down and down and down into that depressed, anxious place. Pattern interrupt, pause. And in and of itself, you becoming more aware of that story is a pattern interrupt. And now you're making that pattern interrupt even more amplified by saying out loud, oh, that's a lie. I've been buying a lie. And pause. And instead of judging yourself or your mind, just breathe into the moment and just notice it. And then get curious with, what do you see? What can you smell? Maybe this is a good moment to step away from your computer or your phone. Maybe step outside, put your bare feet in the grass or the sand, smell a flower, smell the blooms that are alive. Right now, it's starting to be spring here in Portland, Oregon. So it's like there's starting to be blooms and the cherry blossoms, and they smell really amazing. And soon there will be lilacs, one of my favorites. Right now, there's the hyacinths that are out there. They smell so good. Smell something that just really lights you up. You might take a taste of a strawberry. You might touch something like your face, or caress your arm, or a fuzzy blanket, or your pet. This pause and getting into your senses helps interrupt the brain, because when you are in the present moment, you're in a whole different brain frequency. So you've just gotten off the superhighway. And so, no, this is not the moment when I'm going to talk about affirmations. That's not that's not one of the tools that I use. And I'll be unpacking more tools and practices that you can use to be in your own journey of untaming and homecoming in the episodes ahead. So keep listening for more of those. Yet today, what I'm really inviting in is this pattern interrupt that gets you off the superhighway and into sensing into, what are you aware of is true here? If that lie that I can't trust myself, now that you know that's not true, what are you aware of? What's beyond the lie? What's the truth beneath that and beyond that? And when you allow yourself to begin to tap into what you know and what's true for you, this is revolutionary. This is rebellious in a world that is constantly trying to convince you of all these lies. You can't trust yourself, you're not enough, all of those things. So you become a walking, talking pattern interrupt by bringing more awareness to what these stories are, by using the pattern interrupt of the pause, And by coming home to your senses and then asking yourself what you know. And here's what I know, that when we are buying into the stories of these inner critics, these conditioned thoughts, and what I call the negative narrators, they drain our energy, our life force, our power. Yet when we begin to shift out of them, we reclaim our power and we step into being the leading lady of our life, the one who saunters through life, guided by our internal compass, our intuition, pleasing ourselves, knowing our worth, exuding the confidence that comes when you're trusting you're right where you need to be on your path, no longer comparing yourself to others, no longer looking outside of yourself for what's the correct path here. And when we are in and being and embodying our power and being the leading lady of our life, we are attracting even more magic and miracles and money and possibilities to us, because we're loving ourselves, we're open, we're being in that vulnerable space where we have our strength and our softness. We're not needing to prove anything to anyone. And that's what's available to us. That's what's possible for us. And I invite you to tune into what is the leading lady of your life. When you are in that confident, powerful space of embodying all of you and untaming from these stories, what do you know about the leading lady of your life? Who is she? How does she move through the world? And to really anchor in the wisdom from this episode today, you could do some journaling about this. Take that as a question into your journaling and explore this and explore that negative narrator. Which is the negative narrator that is most up for you right now? And write down these steps that I've shared with you about creating that pattern interrupt. And then if you'd like to tap into some community conversation about these themes of the midlife awakening and the midlife homecoming, come on over and join our private Facebook group called Live Your Yes. The link is in the show notes. And if you'd like more support with your own journey of getting free of these stories so you can live your most authentic, audacious, lit up life where you are prioritizing yourself, your dreams, and your desires, check out the link in the show notes where you can schedule a call with me to explore what it would be like to do some work together. I'd be absolutely honored to be a guide and to be of support to you in your own journey of coming home to yourself, because you are powerful beyond, beyond, beyond what these negative narrators and stories may have been attempting to convince you to believe. And if you're listening to this episode, and if you're resonating with this as truth, then I just want to say, welcome home. Welcome home to yourself. And I look forward to this journey with you in future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till the next time, see how much fun you can have playing with yourself as the leading lady of your life. Bye-bye.